The word residential or proxy listing tells you almost nothing about what you are buying. Two providers can both print residential in big letters and sell completely different levels of risk because the label says where the addresses supposedly live, not how clean they are or how they behave once your account sits behind one. For running many accounts, the gap between a good residential provider and a bad one is the gap between an account that quietly works and one that dies on its first login. This is what separates them, tested on live accounts, not repeated off a sales page. Why I can compare these? I run Proxy and cloud phone farms for a living, and residential is a real part of that stack, next to the mobile lines I run on my own SIM cards. So I buy residential from several providers, put it behind real accounts on real platforms, and watch what happens over weeks, not minutes. I'm not ranking these off a feature grid or an affiliate dashboard. Everything here is the pattern I see when the same account runs behind one provider's addresses versus another's, the only comparison that has ever mattered to me. What residential actually promises. A residential proxy routes your traffic through an address that belongs to a real home internet company, the kind a consumer ISP hands to a house. The promise is that a platform looking at your login sees a normal household connection instead of a server. That promise is real, but only as strong as the addresses behind it. A clean home address one careful account uses looks like a family at home. The same label on a burned address that 100 strangers abused last week looks like exactly the problem it is. The word is a starting point, not a guarantee. Pool size is mostly marketing. The first number every provider shouts is pool size, millions or tens of millions of addresses. Treat that as marketing. What matters is not the global total, it is how many clean, usable addresses the provider has in the specific country and often the specific city you need at the moment you need them. A pool of 50 million that offers you a few hundred tired ones in your target city is smaller for you than a modest pool that keeps thousands fresh where you operate. Freshness and the recycled address problem. The number nobody prints is freshness, and it is the one that gets accounts killed. Residential pools are constantly recycled, the same addresses handed from one customer to the next as people connect and disconnect. An address someone hammered with spam an hour ago can arrive already flagged, already on a shared reputation list, dirty before your account ever loads a page. You did nothing wrong, and the account still gets challenged because it carried someone else's history in with it. A good provider rests dirty addresses. A bad one just keeps renting them out. Yahamte. Where the addresses come from is the root of all of this, and it is what sales pages are quietest about. A clean pool is built from real people who genuinely agreed to share their connection in exchange for something, and those homes behave like the ordinary households they are. A dirty pool is scraped from devices whose owners were bundled in without really understanding through some app that quietly resold their line, and those addresses arrive burned more often. You cannot see sourcing on a dashboard, which is why a provider's reputation and how it explains its supply is part of what you buy. How sticky sessions really behave. Most providers sell sticky sessions, an address that stays with you for a while, instead of rotating on every request, and this is where the marketing and the reality drift apart. Sticky rarely means fixed, it usually means best effort. The provider tries to hold the same address for a window, but the underlying line is a real person's home connection, and when that person disconnects your session, ends whether you were finished or not. So a sticky address can vanish mid-task through nothing you did. The honest providers admit sticky is a target, not a promise, and give you a clean way to hold or reacquire an address. Session length and silent rotation. Fight to that is how long a sticky session is even allowed to last. Many providers cap it 10 minutes, 30, an hour, and some rotate silently the instant that timer expires or the sauce drops. For a logged-in account, that is a real hazard because an address change in the middle of a session, a sudden jump to another city between 2 clicks, is exactly the pattern a platform reads as suspicious. Before you trust a provider for account work, know its real sticky ceiling and what happens at the edge of it, because a silent hop at the wrong moment is a self-inflicted flag. Geo-targeting. Country is the easy part. Every residential provider will sell you country-level targeting, and country is the easy part. The real differences show up when you go narrower. Can it reliably put you in a specific city, region, or carrier and hold you there? For a lot of account work, the location has to agree with everything else on the profile, the language, the number, the claimed home, so loose targeting that lands you in the wrong end of the right country can still contradict the account. Providers vary enormously here, and the ones that market fine-grained targeting do not always deliver it once you test it. And there is a hidden trade in going narrow, because every filter you add shrinks the pool you actually draw from. Ask for a clean address in one specific city on one specific carrier right now, and you may be down to a thin, tired handful. So target only as tightly as the account genuinely needs. Pricing per GB. Pricing models are where providers punish the wrong kind of use, so match the model to how you run. The most common residential model is per GB. You pay for the bandwidth you push. This is cheap and sensible for logged-in accounts doing ordinary human things, checking, posting, browsing, because that traffic is light. It becomes brutal the moment you pull real volume, because every page and image is metered, and a scraping job trivial on flat plan runs up a frightening bill on per GB residential. Pricing per IP and dedicated. The other common model is per IP, a flat price for a dedicated address or a fixed set of them held for a period regardless of how much data you push. This rewards steady, long-lived sessions and heavier use because once you have paid for the address, the bandwidth is not ticking against you. It punishes the opposite pattern. If you only need a light touch on many addresses, paying a flat rate for each one you barely use wastes money. The mistake is running a heavy job on a metered plan or a light, sprawling job on a fleet of dedicated IPs, then blaming the provider for a bill you designed. The dirty neighbor on a shared exit. Even with a good pool, ask who else is on your address. A lot of residential is shared. Many customers routed through the same exit addresses at once, and that means your account's fate is partly tied to strangers you cannot see. If someone sharing your exit is running abuse a platform actively hunts, the address can get flagged around you, and your clean account wears the consequence. Dedicated addresses, once only your account touches, cost more but carry only the reputation your own behavior earns. For the accounts you cannot afford to lose, that isolation is usually worth paying for. FIRL, control, dashboard, and the APE. The difference between a provider you can operate and one you fight with often comes down to control. Can you hold an address deliberately, release it when you want, target cleanly, and rotate on your own terms, or are you stuck with whatever the pool decides? An honest APE and the dashboard that reflects what the network is actually doing. Let you run accounts on purpose instead of hoping. This is unglamorous, and it is what separates a provider that scales to a real fleet from one that is fine for a single throwaway. Support and whether they replace burned addresses. One quiet test of a provider is what happens when an address is bad. Good ones acknowledge that recycled residential goes dirty sometimes and give you a way to cycle off a flagged address without a fight. Weaker ones treat every complaint as your problem and every GB as sold. You learn this fastest by having one genuinely bad address and seeing how the provider responds, which is another reason to start small before you commit a fleet of accounts to anyone. Basic test a provider before you trust it. This is the part that replaces the guessing, and I do it with every new provider before a single real account goes near them. Buy the smallest amount they sell. Take a handful of addresses and run each through a plain lookup that shows the address, its owner, its network type, and its location, and confirm all of it matches what you paid for. A proxy sold as clean residential that resolves to a hosting company is a data center address wearing a costume, and no marketing changes that. If the basics do not match on day one, nothing else about the provider matters. Then test it on your own target. The lookup only proves the address is what it claims. The real test is your own target platform, because an address can be genuinely residential and still be burned for the exact place you need it. Take one throwaway account you are willing to lose, put it behind the provider's addresses, and warm it slowly the way a real person would, watching for the challenges and checkpoints that mean the platform does not trust the network. Do this on the specific platform you care about, because an address that sails through one site can be radioactive on another. A provider is only proven for your job once it has survived your job on something disposable. Where mobile beats residential. Honesty means saying when residential is not the answer. For the highest friction accounts, the ones scrutinized hardest at sign-up and recovery, mobile still beats even good residential, because a carrier address sits in a crowd of thousands of real phone users a platform cannot cleanly block, and the real number on a real mobile line answers verification the way a genuine user would. Residential is often the smarter spend for the wide middle, the lower stakes accounts where the cost and speed of mobile are not justified. The right stack is not one type for everything. It is residential where it fits and mobile where the stakes demand it. Mirroring a comparison honestly, so there is no single residential provider that wins for everyone, and anyone telling you otherwise is selling. The one that is excellent for city-targeted social accounts can be the wrong tool for a light, broad job, and the cheapest per GB plan can be the most expensive mistake if you run volume through it. Rank them on the things that decide outcomes: freshness and sourcing, honest sticky behavior, real targeting, a pricing model that matches your use, and how they treat a burnt address. Then prove your shortlist on your own target before you trust it with anything that matters. I run residential alongside real Singapore mobile proxies on my own SIM cards, and I only point people at the providers that have survived this exact testing on my live accounts. No affiliate guesswork, just the ones I keep paying for. The tested picks and full guides are at multi-accountops.com with the per provider breakdowns, the sticky and targeting notes, and the honest calls on when residential is enough and when you should reach for mobile instead. Subscribe for more honest, tested multi-account ops. Next time, the account graph, mistakes that link a whole fleet together, even when every proxy and fingerprint is perfect, because the tail was never on the network at all.